Call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Garrick?
Here.
Pepcorn?
Here.
Preston? Here. Strand?
Here.
Mahoney?
Here. The world is back to normal. The Vikings won a game. That's kind of unbelievable, John, when you were gone. Finance. The Finance Department reports that the citywide purchasing card program continues to be successful, and this year the city will receive a rebate check of $272,855. Since the city started purchasing card program in 2012, the city has earned more than $2 million in rebates. Health. The Nurse Family Partnership Program has openings for enrollment. The program supports first-time limited-income moms by having specially trained nurses provide home visits starting early in the pregnancy and continuing through the child's second birthday. More information about the program is available on the Fargo Cast Public Health website. Library. The Fargo Public Library has received the 2021 North Dakota Star Library Award from the North Dakota State Library for going above and beyond with service provided to the community. I think this is really outstanding that during COVID time and all during this time, our library has done so well. And I think as commissioners, we can be very proud of how well our library did. 2, the Maine Library's Recognizing Reptiles event, October 21st, will feature live, cold-blooded creatures in all kinds from the NDSU Herpetology Club. And the Maine Library is hosting Murder and Mayhem trivia event with prizes on October 27th. Police. The police department's community engagement team hosted a multicultural committee event involving a diverse group of Africans, Asians, and Europeans, as well as religious affiliations. It was a great program in which they received a traffic stop presentation and will be part of the future engagement in education, as well as participating in events with the PD's academy students. The police force has got the chief has a nice presentation on a traffic stop and what you're supposed to do. And there's 2 parts of the party, is knowing what to do as a participant, and then what the police officers do as they come up to your car. Water treatment plant. Recently we had Public Works conference in Fargo, and we had an opportunity to have many people who do water, wastewater throughout the state. A Bismarck Water Plant Superintendent Jim Kershaw was recently at the conference in Fargo, and then after returning home sent the city the following message. I have been at Bismarck Water Plant for more than 38 years and have visited Fargo many times over those years. I can only say wow at the improvements that were made over the last couple of years to the Fargo's water. During this last trip, I noticed the quality and taste of the water since Fargo's recent improvements, and it is a fine testimony to everyone involved, and especially Troy Hall and his team. Congratulations and keep up the good work. So it's nice to know that other people can come here and appreciate the good work that's been done by the community. And we do have, I think, the best water in the state, but I think some small town got it this time. But anyway, it was good to hear good work by our team. Tonight we have 2 videos produced by Communications Government Affairs team. First highlights last week's Indigenous Peoples Day festivals in the metro area. What a special day it was for our community. Do I have to hit something? Oh, you want me to do that? Oh, the second video shows that bus that was wrapped last week as a city branding tool, showcasing Fargo as a regional leader and a big city with even a bigger heart. It features changeable rear panel, which can be used to showcase special promotion or events and always keep the wrap new and up to date. Enjoy both videos. Good job, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the October 4th, 2021 regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Again, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 35?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Garrick,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. So just as John Strand took a vacation, it looks like our public comment period, nobody wants to speak tonight, which is kind of unusual. So maybe we're taking a little break over and awe that the Vikings won. Item 37, we have a COVID-19 update. Desi Fleming should be joining us. And Desi, I think you have some good news at least. Some things are starting to plateau a little bit, I hope. John said in Florida, they finally dropped off the plateau and they're going down. So can we hope for that?
There's always that hope, yes. So good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Yes, statewide cases continue to appear to be plateauing with just over 3,200 active cases. Cass has about 599 currently. We have had a significant amount of deaths across the state. Last week, we had a total of 38. In Cass, we now have lost 234 individuals to COVID. Deaths and hospitalizations are kind of those lagging indicators. So even though our numbers are declining, we may see these numbers staying a little bit higher. Hospitalizations have increased by 27 individuals since the last report, and we're at a total of 184 people statewide. The state dashboard is much more reflective now of actual hospital capacity and links directly to the ndhelpc.org page where the providers are actually entering into daily what their open bed status is. As of this morning, there are approximately 5 staffed adult ICU beds, 8 adult non-ICU beds, 4 peds ICU beds, and 8 general peds beds available between our 2 local hospital systems. So space and staffing resources continue to be stretched to capacity. The age category with the most active cases in the state is the 0 to 11-year-olds, presently not able to be vaccinated, followed by the 30 to 39-year-olds. So we are continuing to see a high number of pediatric cases. Overall, kids are doing generally well if infected, but we are seeing serious complications increasing as case prevalence increases for this age as well. Kids are also a part of the transmission chain, so may expose others in the household or school that may or may not be vaccinated, giving the virus more avenues to spread. The efficacy and safety of the COVID vaccines are incredibly good. However, no vaccine is 100%, especially with the Delta variant. We have seen an increase in breakthrough cases. Breakthrough data is available on the state dashboard, but it is somewhat difficult to fish out and very often is misrepresented by those opposed to vaccine. Bottom line is breakthrough hospitalizations and deaths, although increasing with Delta, remain below 1% of total cases. Breakthrough cases are just over 2% with the case rate as well. The other interesting data point is looking at the county view of breakthrough cases per 100,000. The western side of the state, basically anything west of Jamestown, is significantly higher with breakthrough cases, which coincides with lower vaccination rates in those counties, along with no mitigation strategies. Efforts continue within the community on vaccination offerings, but demand has definitely changed. Initial vaccination rates have increased, but at a fairly slow rate, the 12 to 18-year-olds still being the least vaccinated group. Fargo Cass Public Health, along with others in the community, are doing booster doses for those who had the Pfizer vaccine. As a reminder, eligibility criteria for this booster are adults who are 65 and older, adults with underlying health conditions, or adults at risk for occupational or institutional exposure. So these are fairly broad categories and only requires self-attestation to receive. Does need to be 6 months from your last dose in your initial Pfizer series. Fargo Cass Public Health is hosting booster clinics on Saturdays in October and 1 in November by appointment. We gave 698 booster doses this past Saturday. These clinics have actually been a bright spot for staff as the people coming are excited to be vaccinated and very appreciative of the services and the staff. So it's been a really positive experience for everybody, which we needed. We should know more about Moderna and J&J booster vaccines after the ACIP and CDC meet the end of this week, and they will meet on the pediatric vaccines for the 5 to 11-year-olds the first week in November. So we will put out information as soon as we hear final authorization and eligibility for that. I would like to encourage people that even though it may feel like we are on the downside again, that there are 65 million people in the United States yet to be vaccinated. We are more than likely not done with COVID. Vaccination remains our best tool. It's the new public health broken record, but at least we are consistent. In all seriousness, for the health of our community, physical and emotional, we need to work together to get through this pandemic. Please get vaccinated. Vaccine availability can be found at vaccinefinder.org. I would be happy to take any questions, and thank you.
Any questions by the commissioners? Thank you for your team for all your hard work, and I know it's going to get busy now as we get into the flu vaccine and such, so let's get people out there and get it done. Thank you. Number 38, recommendation to receive and file ordinance related to franchises and contracts and electric franchise ordinance. I believe Bruce Grubb to explain, and is it Nancy Morris as well?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. As you're all aware, we have two private electric utility companies that supply electricity, the city of Fargo, those being XL Energy and Cass County Electric. Cass County operates under a franchise agreement, and XL Energy operates under a franchise ordinance. Both the ordinance and the agreement are very similar in nature. It essentially allows those utilities to locate their infrastructure in the public right-of-way. But there is one fundamental difference between the utilities. XL is a regulated utility, regulated by the Public Service Commission, and Cass County Electric is not. So we have similar agreements to these with other telecommunications companies that need to locate their infrastructure in the public right-of-way. So it essentially allows them to do that. We've been working on a new updated franchise ordinance for a number of years. The ordinance actually dates back as far as 1911, so it's been a long time coming, but we're proud to be here. So with that, you've seen most of this before. I did ask Nancy Morris to step up to help answer questions or describe particular things of note in the ordinance. Would also like to point out we have Tony Grinberg with us tonight. He's XL's principal manager for North Dakota. And then on the line virtually, we have Brenda Derrig, city engineer, joining us to help with questions as well. So with that, Nancy, I'll turn it over to you. I think you've got a recommended motion or options for motions as well.
I do. So thank you, Bruce. Nancy Morris, Assistant City Attorney. And really some of the discussion is what was overlapping and what was consistent. We really worked with capital improvement planning and cooperation. Energy innovation was added to this franchise. We discussed insurance and the requirements for self-insurance and insurance policies. Tree trimming standards to the extent that federal regulation will allow. Street opening and restoration, and relocation of facilities in the event of construction. The franchise fee for this franchise would be developed by resolution, which will be presented to you at the time of final approval and adoption. And so that will be coming to you at a later time. That is how most of the utilities and the small cells are set up, is by resolution for the franchise fee. The primary purpose for the franchise agreement, of course, is regulation of the public rights of ways. One provision to call to your attention, however, that's unique to the NSP agreement that is in the present ordinance is for a large volume user. And that one is unique in that it actually has, if the entity that is coming to Fargo uses more than 20 billing cycle megawatts, which I understand is quite rare and quite expensive, that there would be an opportunity for a reduction in the franchise fee for a period of time. That is a break in the franchise fee, may be very attractive to an entity, but entity coming to Fargo may be still very advantageous to the city of Fargo. So as written, the large volume user provision of the ordinance is automatically given if they are eligible and have that much usage. Two other options would be to take it out, that it wouldn't be available, or revise the ordinance to require the potential large volume user to make application to the city commission for determination of eligibility. The ordinance is not presently written that way. If you go that route, I would suggest that we start talking parameters. Is there jobs requirements, those kinds of things in order for that eligibility, so that they're objective standards. I do have a motion set up for each standard. Am I just on a? So the other part of the ordinance that's being presented to you is it's an enacting ordinance, and that would simply be, it is included in your packet, and it outlines some of the North Dakota Century Code requirements, 20 years max time for a franchise agreement, non-exclusivity except for as provided by the Public Service Commission and Territorial Acts, and that it would also allow for municipal power in the event that that was a choice. So and it also indicates that the ordinance will be maintained at the auditor's office rather than them being published on the municipal code site, and it's easily accessible. So again, the only kind of decision point right now, it is written with the large volume user in the ordinance. That is how the recommended motion was set up in my letter to you. The second recommended motion would be amending the ordinance to remove the large volume user. And then the third would be to amend the ordinance to have the large volume user apply to the city commission for determination of eligibility. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the commission? Suggestion on a motion. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. Nancy, maybe you can help me, or maybe Commissioner Pepcorn. Is there any way this large volume usage eligibility topic can connect to tax exempt review ever at all? Are there ever the same people applying for tax breaks and incentives, or probably not, or maybe?
There may be. This is just one way to address their electricity use and the cost that they have for electricity. That doesn't address their building or their incentives otherwise. So it's just for electricity use here.
It could be, Mayor and Commissioners, that might be a place to have some of those conversations, to partner together, but I'm not sure that covers the whole bailiwick that you want. It obviously doesn't.
Nancy, just as I understand it, if you're a large volume user, you get a 20% discount as written in the ordinance right now?
It is actually a complicated formula, but it does reduce the percentage over a certain amount of usage. So it isn't 20% straight across. They're still at 2%, but there may be a reduction for when they go over the 20 megawatts that
Okay.
are being used.
Commissioner Preston.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would feel more comfortable if this went through some kind of review process, so it's not automatic. It should be viewed to some degree as an incentive, not exactly like a tax exemption, but certainly an incentive of sorts. So, and you're asking or suggesting that we should suggest some parameters around that, and I don't have the parameters that we use for tax exemption in front of me, but I would think some of those would probably apply.
If I could respond to that, I think the parameters can come later.
Okay.
I think the question now is, do you want it to be an automatic? Do you want it included at all? Or is it something that they should be seeking?
If I can just clarify, I think it's fine to include it, but that it should go through a review process, so it's not automatic.
The motion she has up now would
third
do it that
one.
way. Commissioner Garrett?
Are there any large volume users in Fargo now?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
What kind of business would it be that would use that much electricity?
I believe like a data mining, it might be a Bitcoin data mining or something to that effect. It would be quite large, is my understanding.
Rand Forks right now is looking for a plant that's $750 million to build, so that obviously probably be a high energy user. What is the pleasure of the commission? Which motion would you like? Or somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
The
I'll
one
make both.
presently on the board?
There's two sections to it, so I'll make a motion for both sections if that's appropriate.
Okay, is there a second?
Let me clarify which motion you're making.
I'm making both motions if you
One
want me
and
to.
two.
If you want me to do separately, I can, but both motions 1 and 2. I apologize for that.
You're talking the third option here that's in front of us.
Now,
Are you?
now you're confusing me. It looks to me like that we have two different motions, 1 and 2. Is that correct? Or am I
There are three
misreading?
options.
I can clarify. There are,
Please help,
the
Nancy.
motion that is on the screen right now is kind of the third alternative. It's already included. The second is take it out, or the third is to amend it to have the application come to the city commission. And that's the motions on the screen right now.
So let me summarize. The two motions that are on there is our third option.
Yes.
That's all right. Then I will make a motion for the third option. I apologize.
And I will second that.
Discussion?
Can I just say real quick, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I think we're very fortunate to have Tony Grinberg in his position. I think that will be very advantageous to the city. And we did have a review process and the staff was involved in it. And I would say, one of the most important things is to work with the engineering department. We obviously have a long-term plans for streets and things like that, and to work in partnership with Excel is very important. We're going to be doing that. I think that's a very big improvement. The new CEO is very supportive of burying overhead lines, and I think there's a lot of our older neighborhoods that would be very excited about that. So I think it's very good. I think we're very fortunate, and I do agree there's lots of questions. We need to review it all, but I'm very pleased with what we're doing so far.
Go off the commission and you're a great guy. I don't understand, Tony. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Yeah, aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Tony Grinberg, you're ahead right now. Do you want to run it by doing a presentation or? No, you're okay? Commissioners have seen a presentation by Excel, which they showed through some of these things, and we're glad to have them as a partner with Commissioner Pepcorn. Thank you. Chief David Splowski, we have the quarterly hate crimes report update.
Good evening, Commissioners. All of you have received the report in your file this evening. In a nutshell, we reviewed 17 cases over the last quarter that had potential hate bias in them. 3 of those cases actually qualified as hate crimes. 2 of those are under review by the FBI. The third case, we don't have an identified suspect to pursue at this juncture. And then there's a 4th case that came in that the FBI took involving a religious institution, so they're reviewing that one as well. This information is being placed on our department website under our hate crime reporting, along with explanation and information for the community in terms of how to report these types of crimes. And then we'll be able to update them on the dispositions as the cases are prosecuted and heard. Absent any questions, that's
Any questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Preston?
Chief Cebulski, can you explain, because we have this hate crime ordinance at the local level, these that are referred on, let's take this more recent one. It started off, at least initially, with the news release that it was a simple assault and got jacked up to aggravated assault. Can you explain the difference in the penalty levels with those two?
An aggravated assault is a felony. So obviously that involves potential prison time. So that's a pretty significant offense. So that case is reviewed by the state's attorney's office. And then the ancillary review of the hate crime aspects of it are reviewed by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And the FBI takes that case. U.S. Attorney's Office reviews it for federal hate crime violations, and that's a separate prosecution. So the same individual, if the FBI, and I think strongly that they will prosecute this case, would be potentially defending himself in 2 different state and federal venues. But the ordinance has not been used in the quarter. However, the cases that we've had, the FBI has taken. So we wouldn't charge someone with both the ordinance and a federal crime, because that would be a potential conflict, almost like a double jeopardy situation.
Sure, so it's obvious that there's an advantage, actually. Even though hate crime may not be the charge that goes along with it, there's an advantage because of the penalty level when it is referred to the state's attorney's office.
Yeah, well, yes. And so in this particular instance, so our ordinances, address simple assault, which is a lower level of assault. That's where you're going, yes. Criminal mischief, which is damaging property, and then phone harassment types of things. So the ordinance covers those issues. Those would be misdemeanors in the state's attorney's office as well, or could be charged in the city prosecutor's office. So yeah, it's a higher level of the aggravated assault. Now, the aggravated assault is because of the injury to the victim, because she had her airway restricted. So by virtue of that act, that made it a felony.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions, commissioners? Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you.
Item 40, recommendation for Liquor Control Board to deny request to amend the Class FA and FARZ alcoholic beverage licenses. And Steve, just for the public, can you just tell us what the cost of a Class FA license is and the cost of an FARZ license?
So the initial issuance fee of a cost of the FA license, Mayor, is $100,000. The FARZ license has been capped and are no longer being issued, but the cost of that when we were doing those were $50,000.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Steve Sprague, City Auditor. So the issue before you here, the Liquor Control Board received a request to amend the FA license and FARZ, as the Mayor said, so that 50,000 in food sales, regardless of the amount of alcohol sales, would now qualify as meeting the food sales test of the FA. That was the request. The current ordinance reads that the alcohol sales are to be adjunct to the food sales, so something less than the food sales. And so the Liquor Control Board, with that in mind, recommended denial of this request. That's all I have.
You don't have any other slides? This is
That's
it?
all I have.
One slide, okay. Commissioner Pepcorn, thoughts?
I think I'd rather let the people that are protesting have their
Okay.
their view than me speaking. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, who do we have here today?
Mayor Mahoney, Commissioners, City Attorney Johnson. I'm Brent Edison from the Vogel Law Firm, and I represent North Star Hospitality LLC. I'm going to move through this quickly, so don't be put off by the intro. Discussion points. I got a few things. I just want to introduce my client, North Star Hospitality, doing business as Southtown Poorhouse. I want to provide a quick background of really why we're here in the first place and exploring these different options. And then I want to, as a third point, talk about why I think change is needed to the current, I guess, greater than 50-50 food to alcohol ratio. And finally, talk about solutions, which could include lowering the food percentage from the greater than 50%, or what we've proposed, and it was rejected by the Liquor Control Board, but I hope you'll reconsider, and that is another option besides the 50-50 ratio for a $50,000 per month in food sales to be considered a bona fide restaurant and meet the requirements of the FA license. Okay, so getting started, North Star Hospitality, Southtown Poorhouse, there's a picture there. It's the shops at Osgood on 45th, 4281 45th Street. It's co-located with Dwayne's House of Pizza. There's one entrance to the building, and I'll briefly touch on that. We've got a full menu of prepared meals, prepared on from scratch meals, all kinds of meals, including, and you'll see Dwayne's pizzas also that are prepared in the kitchen there on the menu and sold through the point of sale there. We got a full kitchen. You can see just all the food getting pushed out of there. At the Liquor Control Board, we presented a letter that indicated that from a salesman from U.S. Foods indicating that it was Southtown Poorhouse was the number 3 account, the highest account, number 3 out of 40-some accounts. They push a lot of food through there, which City Auditor Sprague has acknowledged in the memo that you received. The lease that the Southtown Poorhouse has requires an FA license, which is I put that in here just because it's a question that came up before the Liquor Control Board. Now, was it anticipated that this was going to be a problem when Southtown Poorhouse got their liquor license? No, it was not. And as City Auditor Sprague has indicated in the memo that you received as attachment 40 to the agenda, he points out that this classification was established before before a liquor license was applied for, and that's true. It's also true that my client felt that it had been green lighted, that the business plan with Dwayne's and the Dwayne's Pizzas could be included as the food, part of the food component, those that were sold on the premises. Okay, and just by way of background to explain why we're here, I just want to touch on that. So what happened was there was, there's a reporting requirement, reports were submitted, and at the request of the city of Fargo, there was another look at that, and not including Dwayne's Pizza sales, the ratio came out at 42% food and 58% alcohol. There was a violation. I bring this up by way of background as far as why we're here and making one of many attempts to remedy this situation, other attempts to include increasing food sales. So this is, but the other prong of this, we have our recommended ordinance we're going to talk about tonight. The violation is still in litigation. The question about whether you include or do not include Dwayne's Pizza sold on the premises is in litigation, and this is I guess an attempt to see if we can seek resolution. If there's not an ordinance adopted, we'll be proceeding with the hearing. That case is currently remanded back to the City Commission. All right, so that's the practical reality for my client, why change is needed. For others, a change is needed because consumer preferences have changed. It's no longer surprising when the alcoholic beverages part of the tab is more than the food part of the tab. People are enjoying craft brews, designer cocktails. You can have $8 beers, $13 cocktails, and more bottles of wine with the meal. There's more options, more costs than ever, and the cost of the alcoholic beverages can easily exceed the cost of the food. There's no safe margin and a strict 50-50 ratio. And so Mr. Sprague, City Auditor Sprague has indicated that as an adjunct that has a particular meaning, which I think you can read that other ways. If a restaurant has 49% one year and 51% the next year, one's adjunct and one isn't, that seems rather arbitrary. So that's the problem. Changing consumer practices, the practical realities for my client, and the possible solutions would include, as I mentioned, lowering the food percentage from 50%. I think Mr. Sprague has indicated previous meetings that at one point it was 75%, it was lowered. It would suggest that it's past time for another change and perhaps go to 40 or something else. But we're here tonight to talk about leaving it at 50-50 or greater than 50-50, but saying that you're a bona fide restaurant if you sell $50,000 per month in food sales, and that meets the criteria. All right, so you have the proposed change with you. The red language is just simply, this is the definition of Class FA license, Section 25-1506. We just say that add the option that either 50,000 in food sales per month or 50% or more annual gross receipts. We make that change for the FA license. We make that change also to be consistent for the FARZ license, which just to be consistent. We maintain record-keeping requirements the same and change that as well, which is part of the amendment that you have. The renewal requirements would require auditing of books and records to make sure that the gross revenue exceeds 50,000 per month. Reporting the same ability of the city to investigate the gross revenue as well as it does with the 50-50 ratio, and same record-keeping requirements. And so basically, it provides that option of 50-50 ratio, greater than 50%, or 50,000 per month in food sales to comply. And it changes the other ordinances to achieve that. And so I'm here, I guess, to answer any questions you might have.
In your research, how did we ever come to 50%? In your estimation, when you look around the country, how did we come to 50% food alcohol?
Well, I can't speculate on how you came to that. I know there are other cities that have that. There are cities that have no ratio requirements so long as you're a restaurant.
Well, I mean, was it, Steve, was it at one time just a safety requirement? They're thinking if you had 50-50, then you weren't serving too much alcohol and the people weren't DWIs or whatever?
I think, Mayor, it was more to kind of have a lineup with the state law. The state law allows two provisions where a minor can be present where alcohol is served. Both require the facility to be a restaurant. In one case, if the minor is accompanied by their parents or guardians, it doesn't really matter what the food sales are. As long as the parents are there, the minors can be present. In the other case, if minors are there without their parents, then the food sales must exceed the alcohol sales. And so that's where we came up with the 50-50. So if you think of an Applebee's or something like that, kind of your neighborhood sports bar or whatever, food sales exceed alcohol sales. Alcohol is mixed poured in a room that's separate from where the food is served, and so then the minors can be present. So,
Okay.
yes.
Commissioner Preston?
Steve, if you could answer a question, can you give us some history as to why it went from 75% down to 50?
It was actually at 65%, not
Okay.
75%, and it did go down to 50%, largely for the reasons that Mr. Edison is expounding now, that some of the industry changed a little bit, and so the city made that adjustment. We did not feel that it was time to go to like 40% or something like that. We thought that 50% was appropriate.
Commissioner Pepcorn?
So, Mr. Chair, obviously, it's unfortunate because this is it's an excellent business and we appreciate them having it in Fargo. But the thing you have to be careful of is this license was less expensive than some of the other licenses. And so if we change something, then that impacts the people that own the other licenses. And so that's the one thing that I would really caution. And that's why I believe that the Liquor Control Board was not in favor of this, because we have the rules, and basically what they're asking is for us to change the rules so they can fit under the rules. Instead of what they could do is buy another license and redo their lease agreement, and then that would solve the issue. And so that's
Could they buy another license? I thought there wasn't one available.
well, there might not be at this time, but there might be at some other time. And so, but that's, to summarize it, and it's unfortunate because they're obviously an excellent business, but we can't change our policies to fit each person's issues if they can't follow our rules. These rules were in effect when they bought the license, and now they're asking us to change the rules because their business has changed. They could buy a license that would fit this, and we could follow our policies. That's just my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Garrick?
Yeah, this is a very interesting problem, and it's something that's been happening a long time in the city of Fargo. A Class A license is how much?
On our, what we issue them for is 115,000.
So it's 15,000 more than than a restaurant license is.
Correct.
And so you have a restaurant license. It sounds to me like you want to have a bar license. The reason they don't have a bar license is because we heavily restrict them. There are only 17 bars in the city of Fargo. 17. I think most of us could look around and say there's far more than that, but they don't. But they meet that threshold of 50% food. So we could easily fix this problem and allow them to buy a Class A license by not heavily restricting them. We've had 17 bar licenses in the city of Fargo for over a decade. How long? I know it's hard to tell right now.
That's a long time.
It's been a long time, and our population has ballooned. Not only has our population ballooned, we have grown as a city, very far south, and even all the way north. So we need to, instead of fixing this particular problem, we need to add or stop restricting bar licenses. The free market will tell us. I've been making this argument for 7 years now. We have restricted to the point where we're making good businesses into bad guys and finding them and threatening to take away their license because we have a bad structure. We need to allow them to buy an A license and allow them to continue to be the good business they are, and they'll buy it for 15 grand more. They'd easily buy that. They know that it's worth it. So what I'm proposing today is, instead of doing what this is, which is just a get around, just the way Dave said, it's the way to get around the system, let's change the system very simply and add at least 5 more bar licenses in the city of Fargo. They will sell instantly, and they will operate just the same way that this establishment is. It's not going to be, huge bars that happen. We can still have a say in that. But there are no bars south of 32nd Avenue, really, in the city of Fargo. In that area, there's nothing. In far north Fargo, there's really only one, and that's the bowling alley. There are a lot downtown. So people can say there's too many bars in downtown. There's not, or in Fargo, I mean. There's not too many bars in Fargo. There's too many bars in downtown. But there's not nearly enough bars in other areas of the city because we can see the demand is there. And they're trying to get around it using our system. So I'm going to make a motion that we add 5 more Class A licenses to our structure.
Is there a second? Are you seconding, Mr. Pipcorn?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. Commissioner Pipcorn. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Preston first.
Let me just clarify. So with the menu that you put in front of us, all of that food is prepared in Poorhouse. Is just the pizzas that are prepared in Duane's?
Well, I showed you a slide of the window to the kitchen. And I should have showed you the whole kitchen, because behind that is a very long kitchen. And at one end of the kitchen is where the Duane's pizzas are prepared. And at the other end of the kitchen is where the Southtown food is prepared. And so it's prepared at the location, and then it's served and goes through the point of sale of the Southtown Poorhouse restaurant. It's on the menu.
If you added the pizza revenue to that, what would be your ratio? Would it hit the 50-50 if we had Duane's Pizza in there?
I don't have
okay,
figures
sorry.
today, but let me tell you this. It's my understanding that, and I don't have the figure. I've got the figure after, but it's my understanding that it was computed once and met the requirement, and then computed again without the pizzas, and then it was 53-40. So I don't know if
Steve, do you have that?
Other Sprague has that, or
Well, I think that we're getting a little bit distracted here.
Yeah.
That matter, as the attorney said, has gone to court and has been remanded back to the city, and we will be having a hearing on that, depending on the outcome of this. If you decide that you want to change this license, they may decide to drop the lawsuit. If you decide that they, at this point, need to follow the rules that were established when they got the license, then we will proceed with the lawsuit. So I think we're being just a little bit distracted, and as long as I'm talking, he presented 2 options for the city. One was to lower the percentage, change our ordinance. The other was to change our ordinance and set a bar of 50,000. But he didn't talk about an option where they increase their sales, which would then make them fall in line. So I guess that's a little bit, frustrating from staff point of view that, they're only saying that the city needs to change because we didn't meet your your pre-established percentages.
Commissioner Pipcorn?
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gehrig brought up the whole increase in the number of licenses, and with the census, then I would say it is possible that we'll be adding some more licenses, but we have to wait. That's a process. It doesn't go as fast as we'd like. And I would say, so Commissioner Gehrig proposed 10 new licenses. Well, there's obviously people, or five new licenses. There's people that would object to that, as you already know, and I think that should go through the Liquor Control Board, no matter what the number is. But the other thing is, you can't restrict what part of the city that they can go in. If you sell a license, that should be open. They should be able to have that license wherever they want to be. And so I think you have to be very careful when you start saying there's too many licenses downtown. I think that's part of the business plan. That's up to the people that buy them. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner
Chair.
Strand and then Commissioner Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious whether Steve or whether Commissioner Pepcorn could answer this, but we have a new approach going forward with our new members appointed to the Liquor Control Board, citizen members. Can somebody tell me what's the sentiment there at that table? What do the citizens want? What, are they saying, are they aiming us forward to modify and loosening up these rules, or are they aiming us forward for tightening up the rules that people apply for, knowing they're there when they apply? What are they saying?
So, Mr. Chair, I don't want to speak for them, John, but this was the recommendation of the Liquor Control Board, and the new members have joined since then. But I think that's an unknown answer, and so. But I would say, just in general, you have to be very careful when you start giving your own opinion, because there's groups that might want to have more licenses, and there's groups that might not want to have more licenses. And I think.
But they heard it, Dave, and recommended denial. This is what the memo says.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, that's correct. But I don't believe that was voted on by the new members. Steve, you can correct me.
Yes, we brought this to the new members, and
There you go.
they heard the testimony and voted to deny the request.
Commissioner
And
Preston.
it's also important to remember, as the attorney said, their lease required them to have an FA license. So they were coming in knowing what type of license their lease required.
Want to respond to that, Brent?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just respond, I've listened as it's been described that my client did not play by the rules here and applied for a certain license and then wants to change the rules after the fact. And just to be clear, I mean, our position is that the city of Fargo was aware of the Dwayne's arrangement and basically gave the green light that was a good idea and that it would work. And basically in reliance on that, put $1 million into this operation, and then later, no, the pieces don't count. So I know that's a matter for another day, but it's been brought up and characterized in a way that I don't feel is accurate. So I just want to comment on that. Thank you.
Commissioner Preston.
Couple of questions. Steve, what was the vote in the Liquor Control Board? Was it 5-0? 5-0, okay. Second thing, I don't support making changes haphazardly, because when you make a change in one area, it's going to impact a lot of other areas probably. I do believe this is a symptom, just like every single time we develop a new category to try to work around the market and what probably creative ideas are coming before us. So I do think that this is another indication that we need to look at the alphabet soup, and I've said this many other times, and I know it's a challenging issue, but that's really the only way we can get, I think, to the core problem here. I don't want to change anything as a result of this quick conversation up here, but let me ask, you indicated that this has gone through the court system, it's been remanded to us. Can you explain that a little further? So what is the suit? Is it to change it to 50,000 or?
No.
Okay, so what is it?
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy.
Nancy Morris, can you explain that, please?
Well, I can try. So what happened was this tribunal decided that in fact the violation occurred. It was not a 50-50, that the pizza sales would not be included in the total sales. And they appealed that decision to the district court. The district court remanded it back for a full hearing. So it was not a decision based on the merits of the case. It was based on the question as to whether or not the licensee had a full opportunity for hearing. So this body did find that the violation did occur. And it will be coming back to you at some point for a full hearing, and then likely go back up to the district court if you make the same finding.
Commissioner Gary.
Steve, what is a Z license?
What is a Z license? A Z license is essentially the same as an A license, in which there are no food sales requirements. The initial fee on the Z is, I believe it's 105,000, slightly different than the A.
And so true or false, we created 2 Z licenses to be used only in downtown.
When the initial Z licenses were created, we created 2 for downtown and 2 for away from downtown.
So we created a license just for downtown, 2 of them.
Yes.
Okay, the FARZ license, what's that mean?
It's similar to the FA license, food sales exceed alcohol sales. It was created again for the Renaissance Zone at a time
downtown.
when there was no activity downtown.
Right, so we created licenses just for downtown, and those were half the price of an FA license.
That's correct.
Okay, so not only do we create licenses for specific parts of town in our past, we cut them in price. We made it cheaper. So to say that we can't create licenses for parts of town, we do it today. We do it all the time. So yes, we can. We can create 5 new licenses today, and I take a little bit of umbrage at the idea this is haphazard. This debate's been going on for almost a decade, since I've been around. And we know what the answer is. We overly restrict the Class A licenses, which trickles down into all these other licenses. If we didn't overly restrict the bar license, we wouldn't have to have the alphabet soup that we have today. We could just have the bar license. But we can't do that because the people who own the licenses currently, people who own Class A licenses currently, do not want more Class A licenses out there because when they go to sell them in the open market, they're not as valuable. The African Nightclub's bar, or their license for their bar, would not be as valuable if there were more of them available. Okay? It's strictly supply side economics. It's very simple. So the reason we are not able to add more licenses today is political in nature, 100% political, and there is a clear force of people who own licenses who will not allow some politicians to just go ahead and do the right thing. Do the right thing. Don't restrict this man's license. Let them operate. They're a good business, but we're going to punish them, and we got to do all this court and all these other things because we're restricting licenses, and it is arbitrary to restrict them in this way. But that's the system we've created. So do the right thing, add more licenses, and if we have to say that it has to be below 32nd Avenue for a new bar, fine. We've done it in the past. We're doing it right now.
Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, it might seem arbitrary and detailed, but the bigger picture is we have a real serious alcohol issue in our community. And we need to not lose sight of that for public health and for community wellness. You know, so I'm very cautious of going down and opening up the doors to just facilitate more and more and more. I move the recommended motion that we agree with the findings of the staff and the Liquor Control Board and deny the request to amend the FA and FARZ licenses were as it's written. So I move the recommended motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
You know, a couple things come to mind is that in the community, Commissioner Pepcorn, we have grown by 20% in the last 10 years. So in theory, that would say we probably need to add some more liquor licenses, 20% theoretically, if you're going by, we used to go by population, a new FA license every 10,000 people, we used to do roughly at one point. I think you're running into a problem of business plan, and we've had a couple businesses, Twist went out of business, other businesses go out of business just for what you talked about, is people are buying more expensive alcohol, wine, different things than they did before. So it's hard for your original business plan to survive today. One of the solutions would be, because you're going to be back here, we're going to have a hearing again. One of the solutions would be to allow you to have a license, pay us $15,000 more. It's problem solved. You don't have a 50% food ratio, and you continue to run your business. As a commission, we sit and fight for businesses all the time. We did stuff during the COVID for all the businesses. You're not going to go away. You're going to try to make business survive. And I know a lot of people south side like your pub. So it's kind of one of those dilemmas. Are we punishing you because we have a strict rule of how many licenses you have? And Commissioner Gehrig, you do make a good point. Supply versus demand is that you have a arbitrarily high value. If African Club's value is $250 or $280,000, a license that's really only worth $115. So we do have to think about a solution for this problem, and one of the solutions could be, Eric, could we give them a license for $15,000 more, or do we have to do an ordinance to do that? Or Nancy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can address that. There isn't a license available, nor could they apply for the license given their current lease terms. Their lease does require an FA license. It doesn't allow any other license. And that was a matter of, I'm sure, negotiations between their landlord and them because there were other licensees in the area. So again, it's not that they can just apply for a different license.
And they can't change the lease,
They
Brent?
have to
They
have an
can't
FA.
change that lease that you could do, F?
No, that is
Oh,
a
okay.
problem.
Commissioner Pepcorn.
Mr. Chairman, leases are changeable. They're an agreement that everyone here has experienced lease agreements, and you can change them. So to say that that can't be done, that's not a true statement. Thank you.
Do you want to respond to that as an attorney?
I just would enlist any help that may be supplied on that. But, well, here's what I would characterize this. We've talked about, the need for certainty and all that. We thought we had certainty here. And we thought that this business plan, including these Dwayne's Pizzas, would be satisfactory, would work, and was blessed by the city. Now, there's going to be a time to consider that at a full hearing and to have, this time, witnesses giving testimony and a full evidentiary hearing on that. But we characterize this as the businesses involved structured their businesses with the FA license in mind, and feeling that and for my client, that the Dwayne's Pizzas would be included.
Commissioner Preston.
Mr. Chairman, I just think that with everything here, it would be wise for this to proceed to a full hearing. And in fact, maybe even have the courts decide whether this particular point, we are doing the right thing or not. So I fully support just denying this and going forward.
Any other discussion?
Can I add one more thing real quick? So the words that you, and I'm not a legal mind at all, but what you hear is, we thought, green light, there's nothing in writing, and so that's why this case isn't going to stand up, because a judge is going to say that that's not legitimate arguments. You got to have, where was this written? Where was this approved? Where is it in writing? You've heard him say that many times. We thought it was okay. We thought we had a green light. That's not going to fly in court. Thank you.
Well, I guess the judge will decide, or whatever. We'll get into that. Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 41, recommendations for a consulting agreement with the Benefactor Group for fundraising services related to the Performing Arts Center. Mike Redinger to explain.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you very much. I'll be just presenting this item briefly this evening, and I just want to go back and refresh memories. We were before the Commission on June 1st, at your regular meeting on June 1st, with Laura McDonald from the Benefactor Group talking about our fundraising feasibility study at that time. And so after that meeting back in June, the Finance Committee went and took this back talking about next steps for the project back in August, a couple of months ago. And what we did at the time was get a draft scope of work provided by Benefactor Group. We received that on August 18th, and then we took it to the Finance Committee on August 27th. That was a unanimous recommendation at the time by the Finance Committee. Just want to acknowledge all of the people who have assisted this Performing Arts Task Force in years past, in particular Commissioner Pepcorn, Charlie Johnson from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and several other community volunteers who are really integral in helping advance the discussion around a future performing arts center in downtown Fargo. So tonight, the scope of work that's in front of the commission is one that will engage Benefactor Group to initiate the planning for the major capital campaign. We've also included in your packet what they contemplate being phase 2 and phase 3. That's not being approved tonight, but that's just talking about the kind of time they think it's going to take to get into both an early phase effort as well as a public phase effort when we raise these dollars. So after the approval this evening, the next steps would simply be to engage Benefactor, get them ready for a kickoff meeting. We're slightly delayed compared to the materials in your packet. You'll see that the agreement they executed was back in August. We would start that on November 1, and then that's a one-year term taking us through next late summer into early fall. The other thing you're doing this evening is authorizing staff, myself, to work with the FM Area Foundation to initiate a fiscal host agreement. This is something that we would apply to the Area Foundation, asking for their consideration for them to hold our funds once private fundraising gets underway. And then finally, the third item approved in the resolution this evening is to allow us to work with JLG Architects to work on renderings, any other drawings that the consultant team would need as they start initiating and re-engaging some of the visits they had in feasibility. And so this, again, term is just getting us ready for the Major Gifts Initiative here. This will certainly be an exciting time for the project, but I just also want to reiterate that this will not be authorizing later phases of work. So the commission will get additional check-in opportunities if we're hearing that we're feeling good about fundraising feasibility and we continue to see major gifts and interest materialize, that we will be able to continue that engagement. But we also have off-ramps available to us. And in this case, we are able to not only terminate this agreement early if we just don't see that the dollars are being put together, but we also don't need to execute phases 2 and 3 if for whatever reason this did not materialize. So I'm happy to answer any additional questions. But again, we thank you for your interest in this, and thank you for hearing the Benefactor Group back earlier in the summer as well. So certainly defer to Commissioner Pepcorn for any additional.
Commissioner Garrick?
What's the cost of this phase?
I'm sorry, could you?
What would be the cost of this phase?
So the cost is actually detailed in your packet, and I've got that in the consulting agreement. What they would be doing, that's in attachment A, what they have is a case for support in the campaign plan. That's $12,500 for the first 2 months of work. And then in the later phases, it's $10,000 per month, trimming down to $8,000 per month by next spring. So that's all in the first phase. And then they've included cost estimates for what they believe will be phase 2 and phase 3.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure the public knows that we're spending money on this. I like it. We're going to have checkpoints. So if we start, we can stop at some point if it's not going the way we want it to. So I'm happy to have more information given to me so we can make a wise decision. But I hope everyone still agrees that if we don't get 50% or more from private equity in this, then it's a no-go. So we'll get that information.
Commissioner Pepcorn?
So, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make a couple of things. First of all, Commissioner Strand was on the committee at one point, and Commissioner Mike Williams was on it too. And it's been, I think you mentioned a couple of years. I think it's been more like 8 years, even though it seems like 2 years. It's been going on. I would say it's a very good thing. We've been very methodical, and we've had lots of different twists and turns, and so I think we're doing a very good job. And my question for Mike is down the road, at the soonest, isn't this like 4 or 5 years away? And talk a little bit about the commitments, even those. It isn't like it happens in a short amount of time.
That's correct. Thank you, Commissioner Pepcorn. It's a great question. Typically, what we're going to be dealing with major gifts are pledges. And pledges might be brought in over time. It might be something that we get a pledge for a year 1 pledge that then culminates in a gift that might might materialize over 4 years, for example. So based on the timeline that's detailed, if we execute phase 2 and phase 3, we don't believe we're constructing any project likely until 2025, 2026, depending on feasibility. So it is a long duration activity. It is something that when you get to the public phase, hopefully you kind of know where we're going to be at. If we have $12 million, $15, $20 million committed, those pledges then will be paid over time. That's really where the area foundation will kick in, because they will hold those dollars for us so that we, on the city side, don't have to take those dollars into governmental accounts and be audited on those dollars. So that's where really their engagement will even come a little bit later as well. But it is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think that clearly came out in our feasibility analysis. We had 38 different unique visits with donors. And I think they also acknowledged that this would be a multi-year commitment on the part of some of these major donors, because it wouldn't come in one check to the project. And instead, it would be something that would be split over several years. So thank you for the question.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the recommended motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe the community really wants to step up our arts relationship with the region. And I'm guessing we've kind of all embraced that as much as we can do it. A question I have just to go forward, when we were all brainstorming, it was pre-pandemic. And I'm hoping that now, as we come out of the pandemic, I hope we do, but I hope as we're coming out of the pandemic that we be nimble and be flexible in that whatever, if we do a project, that it's new world. Because we may not have a performing arts center or experiences like we've had in the past. So I'm glad at this moment in time, we haven't already committed to building and plans and specs and architecture and location when some of that might be changing. And I welcome our input as time comes on, and that 4 or 5 years will help immensely. Another concern I have, and we need to probably also be aware of who else is doing fundraising and how that impacts each other. I believe the Plains Art Museum is looking at a very major arts philanthropy campaign. The Park District, what are they looking for, 40, 50 million? They're looking for major contributions from the public. So we need to have a balance too, and know that the resources are actually there for real. But I join in embracing this notion to see if it's possible, to see if we can take and create something out of this empty canvas artfully.
Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Preston?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Proposal for election and city governance task force. This is something that we've taken on and visited a little bit about. Mike, you're still back up on that one, yep. And tried to come up with a little different solution. We did have a study 18 months ago or excuse me, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, same thing, Dave, is that you forget how long ago is that we did that. Darlette, you said 4 years ago? On election study. And so we have a lot of interest on different things, want to turn it around a little bit different this time. And we have a professor with us now as well that can help in political science, so he has some great knowledge as well. But would like to look at it in a little different fashion, and we'll discuss it tonight and see what you guys would like to do, guys and gals.
Mayor and Commissioners, I'll just be very brief. A memo has been prepared in your packet. This provides some of the history from the 2016 effort on the election and a governance task force, some of the membership that was involved in that committee back in 2016. And then what staff has done is also provide a recommendation on what a new 2021 effort might look like. And I just want to acknowledge Commissioner Strand, Mayor Mahoney, as well as Dr. Hogan. We met internally just to talk about what that composition could look like. We've also presented a couple of options for the Commission's consideration about finding task force members. We're recommending this evening that Dr. Jeff Schatz be engaged to assist us with facilitating a future task force, but a couple of points for consideration. One option being that the internal recommendations team that's outlined in your communication, and I just mentioned the members, could continue to look at applicants, could look at statements of interest that come in, and we could screen those and then provide those to the commission for approval. Or we could defer that activity to the consultant. That's option number 2. And the consultant could assist in screening, reviewing applications, and then assisting us in naming those individuals. So I would just also add in the back of the memo, we also included, again, joint effort here with many staff that contributed to this memo. We also included some information just about composition and where we would like to see the ex officio members come to the table. We certainly know that there's going to need to be some help provided both from the auditor's office, Dr. Hogan, myself, the city attorney's office. So we intend to have the staff really be off to the side supporting this future committee that will really be citizen appointed and led. And then finally, a suggestion that the Fargo Youth Initiative be invited to participate and have a representative there at future meetings. They're welcome to participate openly with this committee. So tonight, really what the commission is being asked to do is approve the composition of the proposed task force and then talk about next steps and authorize us to work with Dr. Schatz on a scope of work. And then also, I'm curious in your thoughts on option 1 versus option number 2 about seating this task force. So thank you.
Dr. Hogan, you want to say anything?
It's well
No?
said.
You okay?
It's well said.
Questions from the commission? Commissioner Preston?
So, Michael, I see with Dr. Schatz's involvement on option number 2, the group refers to him ensuring interested applicants aligned to the city commission's goals and objectives. But I don't see those goals and objectives anywhere. Are they there?
So that would just be simply right below, let's see, the voting membership, and then what the task force role is. That's what he would be willing to support. So developing meeting agendas, facilitating the group discussions, researching topics that the task force comes to. So if the city commission were to endorse that model, that's what he would do in that option and then bring and supply members in that direction. But ultimately, that's a commission discretion about how it would like to seat that task force.
Let me clarify my question. My question was about the goals and objectives for the Election and Governance Task Force. Is that listed anywhere?
We had just identified earlier in the memo some of the topics that have come up, like wards, districts, as well as term limits. Those would be topics that we believe the commission, we've heard, would like to see this task force address. If there are other topics, we would certainly like to memorialize that and make sure that we have that understood from the commissioners so that we're sending the right kinds of questions to this task force. This is detailed up in the very first section under the introduction.
One more comment, and then I'll be done. So it just makes sense that that Dr. Schatz would be very clear about what the role of this task force is going to be if he's going to do the interviewing.
Yes.
With option number 2.
Correct.
Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. Whether Dr. Hogan or you, Michael, would address, we had quite a bit of discussion about diversity.
Yes.
And I think if we could address the desire to have diversity in our applicant pool. And then we also had discussion about how do we, once we get an applicant pool, how do we select people? You know, there was random selection, or Dr. Schatz in that instance would help. Could you address the topics of diversity and selection once we get in applications, and also how I think we're talking soliciting letters, asking people to apply through their utilities bills or things like that, maybe?
Yes, and basically what we're going to be looking at is race and ethnic relations in regards to Black, white, Native Americans, etc. We also thought about whether or not if we will use the terms like binary, non-binary, etc. We're going to be using utility bills, social media, etc., Facebooks, and so on. Yeah.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Preston?
Just one more comment. I also sat on the Election and Governance Task Force back in 2016, And the biggest hole that I saw was the lack of content expertise that was used to educate the task force. So I know, Dr. Hogan, you got some expertise in the background, in your background. I would hope that there would be resources that would be available to this task force to make sure everybody understands commission versus council, wards for, or at large, or whatever all the issues will be. So that was the biggest thing I saw, is that people were coming to the table with varied levels of knowledge and understanding.
Yes, and also too, I might add is that we're doing a tremendous amount of research to make sure is that we are on task and on target when it comes down to commission versus ward systems and council and so forth. So we want to make sure is that we do a thorough research and have everything intact when we decide to present this back to you.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve. Is there a recommendation on here?
Is there a second?
Which option? Because there's,
Oh, yeah. Okay. I would move to approve option number 2.
second.
Second, Tony? Thank you. Any other discussion? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad you're asking for option number 2. One of the reasons is it's really important we don't have some of us sitting at the table fighting for what we want individually. This has to be for the greater public good and in a balcony view. So that's a good approach to this, that you won't have John Strand there fighting for what John Strand wants if he's chair of this committee. To have an outside group of people, an outside leader. Dr. Schatz is a really experienced facilitator. I'm welcoming that approach, Commissioner Preston.
I think we have a good system now, but it would be good to have a discussion about this. Is there anything better? I was just looking at the districting for the county. We're trying to figure out the new planes, and the community's changing, the size of the community and the people and where they live and what's going on. So it'd be great to have a discussion about our governance structure, how it works, how things are going on, and hopefully we can get some discussion that the community can learn from. And just like you said, not everybody understands all this. So how does a commission versus council work? How does different things work? I'm looking forward to a good discussion and hopefully good information for all of us. Roll call vote, please.
Preston?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. You want to finish up, guys? Okay?
Yes.
Okay. Recommendation to approve a purchase agreement for the sale of Island Park parking ramp located at 500 Main Avenue. Jim Gilmore to explain.
Thank you. The city received just one proposal from Bell Bank for the Island Park ramp. The Finance Committee has been recommending that we proceed. This is a major commitment by Bell Bank for downtown Fargo. They're going to be adding staff to their 15 Broadway location from about 50 to over 100, as well as bringing over 250 employees downtown into the Bank of the West building. The terms of the contract will include them providing up to 100 parking spots for the 501 Main development. This is part of this agreement. The city will be acquiring an option to lease those spaces. We'll then pass that option on to the 501 Main group. They'll also continue to rent up to 25 spaces to current people who are leasing space in the ramp, and to have at least 100 free spaces on nights and weekends. The only time they would charge for parking to the public would be whenever the city was also charging, such as during the street fair on Saturday. They want to close within the next 2 weeks, so maybe even a little bit sooner. So it's important we take some action on this tonight. As we were in discussions with them buying the ramp, we were in the middle of a condition appraisal that was already underway. Verbally, we were being told there's no major problems, and there aren't any major problems, but there was a multitude of small problems adding up to about $250,000. They've suggested we reduce the price by half that amount, or $124,000. I discussed that with Commissioner Pepcorn, who's our parking liaison, and he was comfortable with that. So the new purchase price would be 124,000 less than the 9.5 million we had been anticipating. We're continuing to work with the 501 Main Group. We're running into an issue with trying to get an easement onto Broadway with the Burlington Northern Railroad. I've been in discussions with the railroad for the last 4 months. I'm not sure I'm making any progress or not, but we're continuing to have discussions with the railroad. It's a pretty long story, but we're just sorting through some agreements that go back to 1906. Again, we want to close by November 1st. The Bell Bank representative who is going to be here tonight, while fully vaccinated, is in a COVID quarantine, and so they were unable to have a representative here tonight. You did receive a letter from an attorney for the 501 Main development. I mean, I believe most of those issues are things that really need to be in the lease between the 501 Main Group and Bell. That lease would be executed after this closing. Bell has, in their option to us, is committed to negotiate in good faith with the 501 Main Group so that that project can proceed. So my recommendation is we proceed with the contract for the purchase of the Island Park ramp in the terms outlined in that agreement. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions by commissioners? Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, just real quick, I don't know if the other commissioners got the notice, and I guess from my perspective, I would encourage Bell Bank to negotiate in full faith to get all those issues resolved. I don't believe that's enough of a reason to delay the sale or anything like that. I think there are issues that can be addressed between the two parties, but I just wanted to say publicly, we would encourage that to happen, even though we're not taking action to delay the sale. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Preston?
Just one question. I know that we verbalized a lot of support and agreement with 501 Main Project that they could use that parking ramp. I'm assuming there was nothing in writing in regards to that.
Correct. You had voted to kind of accept their offer and enter into an option agreement. Eric, I think, provided that option agreement back in March. That has not been executed yet as we continue to kind of work with these title issues. So there's no signed written agreement with 501 Main, no.
Roll call vote.
Excuse me, Mayor, but just to
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Trahan.
Sorry, just a quick question. Jim, a couple thoughts. How much is invested in this ramp is one question. Number two, how, over the years, if I recall, this was a TIF project and we took it off the TIF district. I'm just curious the dollar amount that entailed in the bigger picture. And lastly, are there any other examples of us having a public TIF project that then gets sold privately to the private sector?
Probably the last